The formation of the Empire at the end of the devastating galaxy-wide Clone Wars ended the Republic that had withstood for thousands of years. The new regime claimed to herald a new era of order and peace within the galaxy, but many within the near-defunct Senate saw it for what it truly was, and were already plotting its demise. Welcome to the Wizards and Warriors channel. We invite you to come along with us through the first episode set in the Star Wars universe, so sit down, grab your nearest droid, lock your S-foils into attack position, and let's jump into the first major action of the Galactic Civil War, the campaign to liberate Lothal. As Chancellor Sheev Palpatine was gathering new powers throughout the Clone War, several senators grew worried at this alarming rate of centralization of authority. Despite their attempts to combat this, their fears would be realized in 19 BBY, when he declared himself Emperor of the new Galactic Empire. Not long after this, their party suffered again with the loss of their leader, Padme Amidala of Naboo, publicly announced as a casualty of the Jedi Rebellion against Palpatine. The truth of her fate was known to those of her inner circle, namely Senators Bail Organa of Alderaan and Mon Mothma of Chandrila, who would act as the new leaders of the faction and serve as the most persistent and most threatening challenge to Palpatine's reign. In its early years, the Empire put a lot of effort into organizing various planets into new systems. They would start by building military installations and educational facilities, such as the ones on Mandalore and Lothal, bringing the planetary systems closer to Imperial authority through a slow brainwashing process. But the real power and will of the Empire would be shown when the more unrestful worlds would protest, leading to severe, near-crippling sanctions. Those that would rebel were treated with no mercy, as an example to those who would try to resist Imperial authority. Mon Cala was nearly eradicated in 18 BBY, and Ryloth's freedom fighters, led by Hera Syndulla, were decimated by the Emperor and his enforcer Darth Vader in 14 BBY. This form of dominance and stabilization was called the Tarkin Doctrine, after one of the closest advisors of the Emperor, Wilhuff Tarkin, and it entailed rule through power and fear. Those planets that were loyal would be transformed into model worlds, and those who even thought of doing anything else would be brutally suppressed. This doctrine led to rapid militarization, and the Empire became a military dictatorship with a strong human elite that brutalized alien populations by either eradicating them or strip mining their planets and leaving them to their fate. The senators still held a certain amount of power, as the Emperor needed them to keep their planets from open rebellion until his secret Operation Stardust was ready. As a result, Bail Organa and Mon Mothma would use their influence to help the worlds that bore the ire of the Empire. As time wore on, they switched to other covert means, mainly contacting the various rebel groups across the Empire, such as Saw Gerrera's Cell, and various other underground movements that oppose Palpatine. They would be supplied with weapons, food, and other logistical needs, as well as information from Imperial defectors and independent intelligence networks such as Fulcrum, which was founded by Bail Organa and former Jedi Ahsoka Tano in 18 BBY. This was a group of agents from various backgrounds in and outside of the Imperial military, and they were vital to the success of these early anti-Empire movements. The planet Lothal was among many in the Outer Rim that were colonized extensively by the Empire, and it was given special attention due to its deposits of dunium and kyber crystals, both of which were highly prized resources for the Empire's projects. This was compounded by Governor Arinda Pryce's actions. She sought to make Lothal a major player as the main Imperial base in the Outer Rim by having military and manufacturing installations all over the planet. However, the extensive military buildup, as well as the concentration of resources, would bring the attention of the still underground Rebel Alliance, namely the crew of the Ghost, known as the Spectres. The Spectres were a group of individuals who had all faced some form of injustice from the Empire. The leader of this group was Hera, daughter of the Ryloth insurgency leader Hera Syndulla. Hera was a highly skilled pilot who owned the VCX-100 light freighter named Ghost, and she left Ryloth along with her C-110P droid Chopper after the failed assassination attempt on Palpatine and Darth Vader. In her opinion, Ryloth's only chance for liberation was through an allied galactic attempt. The second commander was former Jedi Padawan Caleb Dune, who escaped Palpatine's Jedi Purge under the alias Kanan Jarrus and joined Hera after they cooperated against the Empire on Gorse in 11 BBY. The crew would soon be joined by a Lasat warrior known as Garazeb Orrelios, or Zeb, who was one of the few survivors of the Lasat genocide at the hands of the Empire. Another member of the crew, Sabine Wren, was a weapons expert from Mandalore, who left as a result of the Empire's subjugation of Mandalore. And the last member, Ezra Bridger, an orphan recruited from Lothal in 5 BBY after he helped the Spectres in a mission to steal weapons from the Imperials. It was discovered that he was force sensitive, which prompted Kanan to take him as his apprentice. The Spectres ran most of their operations from the Lothal sector and quickly gained a reputation. Their wide range of operations, as well as the Jedi in their crew, led to them being hunted by many of the higher-ranking Imperials, namely Grand Moff Tarkin, who was in charge of the whole Outer Rim, and the Grand Inquisitor, a Force-sensitive Pau'an male who was dispatched by Darth Vader to purge the Jedi. This hunt resulted in the death of the Grand Inquisitor himself during the action at Mustafar, in which the Spectres rescued Kanan Jarrus, destroyed Tarkin's ship, the Sovereign, and escaped with the help of the Phoenix Squadron, which they then joined. The Empire now realized that these rebel activities were coordinated and were far larger in scope than previously thought. With the deaths of several more Inquisitors and Darth Vader's failure to capture them, the Empire's eyes were now fixed on the Lothal Rebels, and the 7th Fleet was sent to the sector at the request of Governor Pryce. It was led by a newly appointed commander, arguably the best tactician in the Empire, Grand Admiral Thrawn. Analyzing different encounters against the rebels throughout the sector, Thrawn concluded that Phoenix Squadron played a role in most of them, which meant that it was a far bigger threat. He provided examples to Tarkin, Admiral Konstantine, and Governor Pryce during his briefing. When asked about his plan, he responded with, "I will start my operations here and pull the rebels apart piece by piece. They will be the architects of their own destruction." After his arrival in 2 BBY, he started planning the operation by letting the rebels continue their activities, offering moderate resistance, as this allowed him to study the enemy. He knew that the capture of the Spectres, or any other small part of the Phoenix Cell, would not be enough to end the rebellion, so he bided his time. During this time, Mon Mothma became disillusioned with the Senate, as the growing number of Imperial atrocities and wrongdoings were left unanswered. Following the Gorman massacre, during which a group of peaceful protesters was massacred by Imperial forces, she gave a speech denouncing the event and naming the Emperor personally responsible for that event and all like it, and resigned from the Senate. Now that she was without her senatorial immunity, the Empire sought to finally arrest one of its most staunch adversaries. However, she evaded capture, fled Coruscant, and made way to rendezvous with Hera's squadron. Thrawn deduced it was Mon Mothma that she was escorting, and sent Admiral Konstantine and Governor Pryce to intercept them at the Archeon Nebula, but they failed to do so. Upon her arrival at Dantooine, Mon Mothma gave a speech denouncing the Empire and calling for all the individual rebel cells to unite and fight to liberate the galaxy, promising that she would be on the front lines with them. With this, the Rebel Alliance was truly formed. As this was going on, Thrawn was getting closer and closer to locating Phoenix Base. Rebel forces had concentrated in the Atollon system for their first operation of the war. They decided on an attack on Lothal as their previous successes and steadily growing strength, along with the arrival of the Massassi group under General Dodonna, had emboldened them. Their plan, ultimately, would involve an unexpected strike upon Lothal, coordinated with the local resistance, where they would use the planetary shields and weapons against the 7th Fleet before it had time to react. The impending attack was discovered by Thrawn's agents as they tracked the Massassi group through the system. Thrawn intentionally leaked the information to Alexander Kallus, an agent of the Imperial Security Bureau, who was secretly part of the rebel Fulcrum network. Kallus tried to inform the Phoenix Cell, but his transmission was intercepted, allowing the Empire to finally discover the rebel base. The rebels only received half of the message, but it was quickly deduced by Captain Syndulla that Thrawn knew their location. She called for an immediate evacuation, but as this order was issued, the 7th Fleet arrived and blockaded their escape, as well as jamming all transmissions in or out of the system. The rebel main ships amassed in Atollon's atmosphere were 3 Bahatok gunships, 7 CR-90 corvettes, 3 Nebulon B frigates, one of them being General Dodonna's Vanguard, 2 GR-75 transport ships, 3 Hammerhead corvettes, and Commander Sato's Quasar cruiser Phoenix Nest. These were outclassed by the 5 Imperial-class Star Destroyers, 2 Argeton light cruisers, and 2 interdictors of the 7th Fleet, with Admiral Konstantine commanding his interdictor on the right flank. Thrawn arrived shortly after on another Imperial-class Star Destroyer, his flagship Chimera, placing it behind the Imperial center. General Dodonna urged an immediate jump to hyperspace, but Commander Sato decided to stay behind with the Phoenix Squadron till the ground forces were fully evacuated, planning to cover the retreat of the Massassi group. The first ship to jump, a Nebulon B frigate, was pulled out of hyperspace and destroyed by Admiral Konstantine, and that's when the rebels discovered the 2 interdictors on either flank, both of which created gravity wells, stopping any and all hyperspace movements. Hera realized that there would be no escape from this fight, and proposed a diversionary attack so that a fighter could leave the Atollon system and contact the rebel command on Yavin 4 for reinforcements that might help the fleet escape the system. Ezra Bridger was tasked with this role, and took command of the Knight Brother. He was to be escorted by Hera's squadron through the opening that the fleet would create. Commander Sato deployed the fleet into a spearhead formation, and sent the Y-Wings to bomb the Imperial flanks and goad them into attacking. This move was anticipated by Thrawn, who countered it by maintaining his position while strengthening his center and sending his fighters so that the rebels had to attack him. Hera then moved her squadron to try and get through the enemy formation, covered by allied squadrons, but they were repulsed. The Imperial bombers then took out a great portion of the rebel right flank, and these losses, along with the advance of Thrawn's 2 light cruisers, checked Hera's progress, forcing her to return to the center to reinforce it. As more and more of the fleet was destroyed in the desperate attack, Commander Sato ordered an evacuation of the Phoenix Nest and had the ship piloted in a way suggesting he was trying to escape. This maneuver was successful, as Konstantine took the bait in an attempt to be the one to down the rebellion's flagship. At the last moment, Sato changed course and crashed directly into Konstantine's vessel, destroying both ships, and this gave Ezra the chance to jump to hyperspace. With that, Thrawn ordered the last interdictor to move to the center and made a general advance, which forced the few remaining rebel ships that weren't destroyed to the ground on Atollon. After conducting an orbital bombardment on the shields, he sent his ground forces to capture the high-profile targets, but the rebels fought for long enough to allow Ezra to return with reinforcements from the allied warlike Mandalorian clan Wren. Mon Mothma had denied help, as she did not want to expose the full rebellion prematurely. Clan Wren would prove up to the task, however, and disabled the last interdictor, allowing what remained of the rebel forces to escape to Yavin 4. The rebels lost most of their ships and 80% of their troops, but the majority of the rebel alliance survived to fight another day, thanks to Mon Mothma's conservative tactics. Meanwhile, Thrawn thought he had crippled the rebellion, and that gave the Rebel Alliance much-needed time to recuperate their losses. It returned to their usual covert operations, finding great success in undermining Thrawn's attempts on Mandalore and Geonosis, but it wasn't until late in 1 BBY that they would once again gather enough forces to resume operations on Lothal. Soon they discovered that Thrawn was working on the TIE Defender program, which could have given the Empire's single-pilot starfighters a decisive advantage against the Rebel ships. The Rebel Alliance sent the Spectres, who once again managed to pass Thrawn's blockade and steal a prototype, destroying the airfield in the process. The Spectres were downed when they attempted to escape, but Syndulla managed to escape, bringing the TIE Defender plans to Yavin 4, where Dodonna's team studied the new starfighter. They found no weaknesses, which meant that the rebels had to act fast. Not long after, the Empire activated Protocol 13 for Lothal. This protocol would start an immediate evacuation of the Imperial personnel from the planet, followed by probable devastation of Lothal from orbit. The enactment of the protocol sprang the rebels into action, as they once again decided to attack Lothal, this time under the leadership of the newly promoted General Syndulla. The plan was to attack and destroy the fuel depot, therefore neutralizing not only the fleet's source of fuel, but also the fuel required for all operations on Lothal. This would be a coordinated attack, with Hera commanding a squadron of 24 bombers and fighters, which would breach Thrawn's blockade, while the rest of the Spectres still on Lothal would destroy the air defenses around the city, allowing Hera's squadron to destroy the depot, rendezvous with the Spectres, and leave the planet. The plan went as scheduled, with Hera arriving and taking out the Imperial fighters and their commander within orbit, incurring few losses of her own. At the same time, the Spectres infiltrated the city and destroyed the land defenses, clearing the way for Hera. But as they passed through the atmosphere, they were assaulted by a hidden line of amassed TIE fighters, which Thrawn had placed there, knowing Hera could easily outmaneuver his Star Destroyers. This all but destroyed her squadron, with the few survivors, including herself, being captured. Thrawn was now confident that he had neutralized the rebels enough to depart for Coruscant. The Grand Admiral was unhappy that the Emperor was allocating funds to the top-secret Operation Stardust rather than his program, and hoped to change his master's mind. He left with his flagship, leaving the rest of the fleet under the command of Governor Pryce and his special agent Rook in command. Not long after, the Spectres attempted to free Hera. This succeeded, but they lost Commander Kanan in the process, as he sacrificed himself so they could escape. This was a Pyrrhic victory for Governor Pryce, as she inadvertently destroyed the fuel depot. She tried to cover this up with a victory parade and briefing Thrawn of Kanan's death via hologram. But Thrawn knew of the fuel depot's destruction due to her actions and promised severe repercussions upon his return. The Spectres, meanwhile, would not sit idly. While Kanan's loss was a severe blow for them, the absence of Thrawn gave them the opportunity to liberate Lothal, and so Hera left the planet to gather forces for the operation, which was unauthorized by the Rebel Alliance leadership. At this point, the leader of the Lothal Rebels, Ryder Azadi, offered Governor Pryce to give up the Lothal Rebels and the Spectres in exchange for immunity. This offer was seen as a golden opportunity by Pryce to amend her failure, but in reality it was a trap set by Ezra. When the governor personally led a large contingent to take the rebels into custody, her contingent was attacked and destroyed by the Force-sensitive Loth Wolves, who allied with Ezra. Hera's arrival with reinforcements resulted in her capture. The rebels then quickly made for the city and infiltrated the Imperial Dome with the aid of the captured Pryce. They were able to take full control of it with the intention of launching it out of the city before it could self-detonate. As they were about to launch it, however, Thrawn arrived at the scene and took command of the Chimera. His agent Rook disabled the planetary shield generators, and the city was bombarded, leading to many civilian casualties. The Grand Admiral convinced Ezra to surrender himself, promising that he would stop the bombardment. However, the young Jedi foresaw this, and not long after being brought onto the Chimera, he played his last card. As was planned, the rebels called upon a large pod of Purrgil, massive whale-like creatures that lived in deep space, traveling from star system to star system. The creatures attacked the 7th Fleet, all but destroying it. The details are lost, but both the Jedi and Grand Admiral were taken into deep space by the Purrgil, who had the ability to travel using hyperspace. With the destruction of the Imperial fleet, the rebels launched the Dome, killing Governor Pryce and destroying the last remaining presence of the Empire on Lothal in the process. The liberation of Lothal would be the first decisive victory of the Rebel Alliance, and Lothal would become the first planet to have thrown off its Imperial yoke, demonstrating to the entire galaxy that the Empire could be defeated. They expected the inevitable Imperial response, but it would never come, as other problems were brewing on the horizon, threatening to shake the foundations of the Empire to its very core. The next few videos in this series will be dedicated to the next major battles of the Galactic Civil War in the Star Wars universe. But we're planning to cover the battles of many other fantasy, sci-fi and space opera universes, so make sure you have subscribed and pressed the bell button. Please consider liking and sharing, it helps immensely. And don't forget to comment. We'll try to read and respond to every comment, as we want to know what you think about this video and which videos you hope to see in the future. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.